all those signs into the video?
They're good.
Is it good the way it is?
Yeah. And the editing.
Yeah, you've got everybody in there. Okay. All right, so because you've got both those posts. And you
These
can get,
parks
okay,
are
great.
your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie. From the fields of Barnesville to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. I've hiked at Salt Fork, done some camping at Burr Oak, paddled at Mohegan, and I've swum at Lake Hope. I've stood in awe of the gorge of John Bryan. These parks were made for you and me. These parks are your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie. From the fields of Barnesville to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. Now I stargazed at Tar Hollow, bird watched at Mommy Bay. I wrote a song at Paint Creek, drove a boat on Mosquito Lake, and I've tasted the waterfall from that waterfall at Ash Cave. These parks were made for you and me. Here we go. These parks are your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie. Fields of Barnesville. Fields of Barnesville up to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. No matter the money they spend, no matter the laws they write, no matter the lies they tell, what they're doing here just ain't right. These parks don't belong to them. They belong to our children. That's right. These parks were made for you and me. Here we go. These parks are your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie. From the fields of Barnesville to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. That's right, they were. These parks were made for you and me. One more time, I said, these parks were made for you and me. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, that's right. These parks are ours. These parks are theirs also, but they are misled. Well, how about 5 minutes? Here come the boys waving their cash. Oh, they're looking up and down for natural gas. Well, they're looking for gas so they can get rich. and they will do anything so they can dig that ditch. They'll say it's safe, they'll say it's clean to frack that well, they'll say anything. Don't be a fool, don't sign on the line, or you'll be sorry in due time. 'Cause you can't drink money, no, you can't drink money, no, no. Say what you gonna do when your water turns blue, and everybody's sick, and you are too. Oh, you can't drink money, no, 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 you can't. Well, sorry to hear you sold your land to the gas and the oil man. Guess you bought his lies, or maybe it's true that you do anything to get rich too. You sell your soul, your healthy life, all the trees, the wildlife. Well, just be warned, when your well is cursed, those dollar bills won't quench your thirst. 'Cause you can't drink money, no, you can't drink money, no, no. Say what you gonna do, your water turns blue, and everybody's sick, and you are too. Oh, you can't drink money, no, 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 you can't. Oh, bum, 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 bum. Ask the people of Demick, Pennsylvania, or Dish, Texas, or Athens County. You know it. Oh, bum, 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 bum. Oh, that's right. Now, don't frack my world. Don't frack my parks. Mr. Gas Man, you're breaking my heart with your slick little lies that make it seem like you're the second coming with a drilling machine. Oh, the devil himself couldn't make that sell if he were drilling these toxic wells. But the devil don't have what the oil man got. That's deep pockets and a prime time spot. Come on, you can't drink money, drink money, no, no. Say what you gonna do, your water turns blue, and everybody's sick, and you are too. Even the gas man's sick as he's driving away, looking for another sucker he can't pay. Oh, you can't drink money, we know it. No, no, the evidence shows now. Oh, you can't drink money. Oh, no, no, no. No, you can't drink money. Ba, 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 ba. So believe it or not, I wrote that song 14 years ago. 14 years ago. We've been fighting, and longer than that. This is insanity. The evidence shows there's an accident once every day and a half. We have sent them the evidence. We have sent them the evidence, and they are not listening. Thank you.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Sounds like you can hear me. Great, so welcome everybody. My name is Kathy Cowan-Becker. I'm the board president for Save Ohio Parks. Welcome to our press conference calling on Governor Mike DeWine to declare a moratorium on fracking our beloved state parks, wildlife areas, and public lands. And let's hear it for Jenny Morgan. Jenny is one of our key volunteers and really the heart and soul of this movement. Jenny mentioned it, but she's the one who did multiple public records requests of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources that uncovered all of the fracking and oil and gas incidents in Ohio. We'll have to move. Yeah. Okay. Okay, are we good? Okay. So Jenny is the one who did all the public records requests So that uncovered oil and gas accidents in Ohio, nearly 2,000 accidents and incidents over 8 years. So just like Jenny said, that's an accident or incident every 1.5 days. We're talking about fires, explosions, spills, gas leaks, transportation truck rollovers that release a bunch of toxic brine into creeks. And this is just happening constantly in the oil and gas industry. And that's what we're talking about putting right next to our state parks. So even worse, on January 3rd, there was a major explosion at a frac pad just 7 minutes from Salt Fork State Park. This was a Gulfport pad. Gulfport has a long track record of fines and accidents. They had just a few years ago had a multi-million-dollar fine from the EPA for pollution from its frac pads, 7 of them in Ohio. And one of them was the pad that exploded. And they were supposed to implement a lot of practices and things like releasing the pressure valves on the storage tanks. Who knows if they did it, but it was one of those storage tanks that exploded. And so just imagine if you saw that online, there was footage of it, flames leaping 100 feet into the air, a huge cloud of toxic smoke. It burned so hot that the volunteer fire department in the area could not put that fire out. They had to just wait for it to burn all the stuff that was in that tank and just burn itself out, which took 18 hours. And in that time, they had to evacuate people in the area, they had to close the roads. And this was just a few miles from Salt Fork. So imagine we have fracking pads being set up just outside the park to frack the park. Imagine if this had happened there. How would you evacuate people from a 20,000 acre park? How would you, what would that do to the air and the land and the water in the park and near the park? What would it do to the wildlife who live in the park? So this is why 30 organizations signed a letter to Governor DeWine, and then over 1,000 Ohioans left comments and signed a petition to Governor DeWine, all calling for a moratorium on fracking our state parks, wildlife areas, and public lands. It is simply too risky. So just this week, the state legislature passed 2 bills to massively increase the amount of energy being generated in the state. And the purpose is to power large energy users such as data centers that are moving into the state and being built here. One data center uses the same amount of electricity as a small town, hundreds of megawatts. And so the argument is we need a lot more energy to power these data centers. But the question is, where will this energy come from? Well, it's not going to come from solar and wind in Ohio. So the wind industry was basically killed in 2014 when the legislature passed a law requiring a setback of turbines of 1/4 mile. That's larger than any other state. And in 2021, they passed a law allowing local governments to kill solar and wind projects, but not oil and gas. They can't do anything about oil and gas projects, but they can kill solar and wind projects, and over 1/3 of counties have banned solar and wind. So what we're looking at is gas, and that was reinforced when our Senate President Rob McCauley and our House Speaker Matt Huffman spoke recently to the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, also called OOGA. And they went to an OOGA conference, and they told them that this energy is going to come from building gas plants all over the state. And even worse, they told OOGA that this gas is going to come from fracking our state parks and our public lands. And it gets worse. They even said that Governor DeWine's executive order saying no surface use, which means that the frac pads have to be located just outside the parks and the wildlife areas, they said that that's not the law and that these frac pads should be in the state parks and wildlife areas. So just outside is bad enough. We know that the air pollution, the water pollution, the noise, the light from fracking, and also all the trucks that have to come back and forth are going to affect the parks. But to have the fracking inside the parks is basically going to completely destroy our parks and public lands. And this is all to make gas to power AI and data centers and cryptocurrency. Meanwhile, in Ohio, we have a major solar manufacturing company called First Solar in Toledo. Woohoo! That's the kind of business we could be supporting here instead of supporting gas. So why is the state trying to suppress that business? So we know that oil and gas operations explode. We've seen it. We know that they cause a lot of health problems, including cancers. But you know what a solar spill is called? Exactly, it's called a nice day. All right, so that's enough for me. We're going to get this press conference started. Just before I move on to the speakers, I'd like to recognize our communications point person, Melinda Zimper. Melinda did all of the work to make this event possible, lining up the speakers, talking with the speakers, creating the agenda, basically organizing this entire event. So thanks so much to Melinda. So first I'd like to introduce Maeve Fellerhoff, a co-founder of Sunrise Athens at Ohio University. Maeve is a student who will speak on what her group wants and how they feel about fracking.
Hello. Hi. Hello. My name is Maeve Fellerhoff and this is Celia Hawk. Together, about 2 years ago, we started a hub of the Sunrise Movement in Athens, Ohio. The Sunrise Movement is a national movement of young people fighting for climate justice. Celia and I started our hub to combat the growing sense of climate doom and helplessness building in our peers by providing them with tangible ways to fight back. This mission has become increasingly difficult in recent months. In the past few weeks, we have watched as the federal government has gutted our national parks, Forest Service, and Department of the Interior. Additionally, we have seen requests for our federal lands to be put under further review for oil drilling and exploitation. I have watched these actions trigger protests across the country and have marveled at the widespread outrage and dissent. Yet, I can't help thinking about how this same thing has been happening in Ohio and no one is talking about it. Celia, myself, and most of the members of Sunrise Athens have lived in Ohio our entire lives. I have an immense amount of love for this state. However, I often find myself having to separate my love for this state from the actions of its government. It is hard to foster hope in a generation of young people who feel ignored by their local and national governments. It is hard to encourage positivity in people who are watching the destruction of the very lands we depend on. Our public lands are first and foremost for the people. Our government is currently allowing our public lands to be used to poison our communities. Every Ohioan I have talked to about this law has been opposed to it. Anyone who relies on public lands, whether that be for recreation, hunting, or fishing, should care about this. Anyone who lives in and drinks water from the communities around these parks should care about this. Any Ohioan who cares about the future of this state should care about this. I am not a naturally confrontational person. I'm not here because I want to be. I am here because I feel like I have to be. We are here because we know what it feels like to be helpless young people in this state and in this country, and we will never stop fighting for the next generation. We will never stop fighting for clean water and a livable future. In a time we can no longer depend on our federal environmental protections, it has never been more important to fight for our state ones. Living in Ohio already means living in the shadow of extreme environmental degradation. Our state parks, forests, and wildlife areas are the last natural areas we have to preserve for future generations. This is why we, as the people who will have to live with the consequences of these actions, are here today to ask Governor Mike DeWine to please call for a moratorium on the fracking of our state parks and public lands. The young people of this state are asking you to show us you care about our futures, not with your words, but with your actions. Help us to preserve our state lands so that every generation of Ohioans can enjoy the great beauty of this state. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maeve, and thank you to Sunrise Athens for your continued advocacy. All right, so now I'd like to introduce Bev Reed from the Concerned Ohio River Residents in Martins Ferry. Bev and a small group of people spent years warning the Ohio Department of Natural Resources about a facility there called Austin Master, which held radioactive gas and oil waste that they were supposed to be managing, but they let it pile up, and the warnings were virtually ignored. That facility was finally shut down last year for storing 16 times more radioactive waste than they were permitted to store. Wow! So now the CEO of Austin Master is claiming he's insolvent. So guess who's going to pay for the $6 million cleanup? ODNR, which means the taxpayers, which means us. So now I'm going to turn this over to Bev Reed.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about a victory that happened last year for Ohio citizens and activists. The victory is rare for the citizens for the state of Ohio, and I'll explain why. A small group of citizens and I led a campaign that resulted in the closure of the toxic radioactive oil and gas waste processing facility in Martins Ferry in Belmont County named Austin Master Services. Belmont County, if you're not aware, is the #1 producer of gas in the state. And it's also where the infamous Powhatan Point XTO well blowout happened in 2018. I see a sign, somebody has it right there. Which released more methane than some countries do in a year. Austin Master took in the waste from the fracking process for much of the tri-state area for nearly 8 years. Things like sludge from the bottom of holding tanks, rock fragments, and toxic brine waste that comes up from the well hole after it's fracked, and filter socks from the waste injection wells that dot the state. The facility operated along the banks of the Ohio River in eastern Ohio, just 1,000 feet from the drinking water for 15,000 people, including me and my family. I started looking at the inspection reports from ODNR in 2021, and what we saw was very disturbing and concerning. Radioactive waste spilling out of containment bins, waste being drug outside the building, waste being spilled on the public road and cleaned up by employees during inspections, waste splatters on the walls, and the pictures really do tell the story. All of that seems minor compared to what employees told us of the conditions. Employees doing and selling hard drugs at work, eating and smoking with hands covered in radioactive dirt, and being treated horribly by management. We started asking basic questions to the city, the EPA, and ODNR, and as we learned more, we uncovered the fact that the facility should have never been permitted there in the first place. On top of a shallow and vulnerable aquifer and a floodplain, in an old steel mill that was already contaminated from decades of toxins and never properly maintained and monitored by previous nor current owners. And the city also had a source water protection plan they weren't enforcing and didn't even know existed until we told them about it. We advocated for 3 years before the Attorney General of Ohio filed a lawsuit against the company in March 2024 for egregious violations of Ohio law, and because the risk of overflow posed a significant threat to the surrounding area and to public health. Those were quotes from their press release. Taken in 10,000 tons, nearly 16 times the amount of waste they were permitted for, and then fired all the employees without warning, leaving behind piles of waste up to the rafters of the building, is a classic example of Appalachia. A company profiting off of the dirty process and leaving a community with the mess. We saw it with coal mining, then we saw it with steel manufacturing, and now fracking and fracking waste. As if out of a sci-fi movie, right after the lawsuit was filed, one of our biggest concerns came true. A 100-year flood hit the river valley. You remember that flood from last spring? Water from the Ohio River came inside the building just mere feet from washing the waste piles out into the aquifer. When toxins like that get into your aquifer, there's no coming back. We could have been the next Flint or East Palestine. After the lawsuit and the flood, we continued our efforts in advocating for the permanent closure and cleanup. It was announced in summer of 2024 by the property owners, 4K Industrial, that they would no longer lease to any company who operates an oil and gas waste facility. And that wouldn't have happened without activists, and that's what I'm here to talk about. That's why I'm talking about this, because I want folks to understand that it was because of people like us, concerned Ohio River residents, and now I work for Buckeye Environmental Network. Accomplishments can happen, victories can happen. And sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. And luckily the flood didn't go inside of the building, but it could have. And you would have been hearing about Belmont County, trust me, it would have been all over the news, probably made national news. So it's a major victory for Ohio Valley activists, stakeholders, and even elected representatives who were working with us to take action. The interesting and the chilling part is that the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which is the state agency overseeing the operations, wasn't the entity that stated no future operations would take place. Why didn't the ODNR ensure citizens, elected officials, including the city of Martins Ferry, who wrote letters to ODNR, that they would deny any future permit transfers? These are questions that remain and show that clearly there is still work to do in advocating for better protections and better laws in Ohio. There were sloppy conditions for years at the facility, and the ODNR should have done a better job at regulating. They should have not permitted the facility in the first place there, and they should have not allowed the roof to leak for years. And they should have had better protections for workers, and they should have had stricter oversight. So now the state had to hire a contractor to clean up the facility. The cleanup began in the summer of '24 and is still ongoing, almost a year later. And it was stated in the court documents that it'll take $6 million to clean up, as Kathy said. Who will pay for the cleanup? Will it be taxpayers that foot the bill? The Ohio Attorney General's office is attempting to recoup some of the cost for the cleanup from the owner, Brad Dimitrovich, in the lawsuit. The court stated that he must pay $1.2 million bond or face 30 days in jail. However, the court allowed him to post a $25,000 bond to avoid jail time while the court processes his appeal from May. The company is stating that it doesn't have the money to pay for the cleanup. What happened to the money, the millions they took in from taking in the 10,000 tons? Corporations and LLCs need to be held accountable when they leave behind messes. Better protections need to be put in place to protect taxpayers. We need to learn lessons from this situation and from this victory. And I share this example today because it's a glaring example of how the government is not serving the people, but rather the companies who are profiting and spending millions capturing the legislators who are allowing them the freedom to operate how they do. It's a lesson in why it's crucial we continue advocating for our rights for clean air, clean water, and a future that's livable. The state of Ohio is not equipped to regulate the industry. There's the example, I just read it to you. They're not equipped. And if they allow fracking to continue on state lands and public parks, the incidents will continue, the pollution will impact people recreating, and there isn't much land left untouched by drilling. If you come to Belmont County, there are 1,625 wells in Belmont County alone. So education and knowledge is power. Let's keep pushing forward to a more healthy and sustainable future.
Thank you so much to Bev, and especially for your years-long work to make that victory possible. Bev's story shows victories can happen, but it is a long and hard slog. Okay, so, okay, great. So next, I'd like to introduce Judy Como-Hart, a member of Faith FACT, which is Faith Communities Together for a Sustainable Future. And Judy just got here, so thanks for being here. And she's going to talk about the responsibility of all people of faith to have be good stewards of our planet and take action to work for a livable planet for future generations. And we may have to get an umbrella here for a moment while there's a breakdown.
I got one.
Okay, sorry for the
Can you hear me now? Okay. In November 2023, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, hosted its first ever faith pavilion, signifying a serious recognition of the role of faith communities and partners in fighting global climate change. Declarations such as Pope Francis's 20 party, the party in control of the Ohio legislature, let's not dance around the issue. They are not interested in what people of reason have to say about drilling under our state parks in Ohio. They are interested in power. They are only interested in control. They are only interested in what they believe will be substantial royalties paid to the state treasury. The people of Ohio, including me and my family, who pay for, own, and use our public lands, do not want them to be cracked. Common sense. We have made our voices clear at commission meetings, yet the commission does not listen to what the public wants. And legislators have made it clear they do not give a damn about anything but lining their own pockets and health polluters. Even if our parks, children's health, and climate are permanently destroyed by their actions. It's a total betrayal of all Ohioans, and most especially our children's future, to allow the oil and gas industry to crack our most precious public land, and worse, to extend the lease terms up to 8 years. Can you believe it? These companies won't stop until our entire state park system has been turned into a giant sacrificial zone like West Virginia. Thank you for your strong consideration of these comments.
All right, thank you so much for Judy. She just got in from Cleveland and we're all the way down to So our next speaker is a young woman from Ohio who caught our attention when she spoke at a national protest against the oil and gas industry. Meg from Ohio speaks honestly and directly. So here's Meg.
I'm going to build on what Judy had to say about change. My name is Meg. I grew up in Ohio, and I do love our parks, but that's not why I'm here. You might have missed it amid the seemingly endless shock and awe phase of the last 2 months. The Blue Ridge Mountains are on fire. The same communities, the exact same communities that just 6 months ago survived extreme flooding and mudslides in Hurricane Helene are now under mandatory fire evacuation orders. This region that experts once called a climate haven, which is also sometimes said of Ohio, we have a lake or inland, that climate haven is now in the loop of climate disaster. As the fallen timber from Helene fuels the fires of today's unusually dry conditions. Likely, the mountainsides left bare from the fire will also be more vulnerable to future floods and landslides. This week, a spokesperson from Polk County in the fire zone said of the fires that residents there are resilient. I don't know about you, but I've heard that word a lot in the last few years, and I'm getting sick of it. Do not let anyone try to convince you that any of this is normal or some divine reality that you have to suffer with thinking it's just part of the world. Fossil fuel storms and fires are not normal, and they are not inevitable. We do need to strategize for climate resilience, but that doesn't mean we give up on reducing emissions. The IPCC is very clear. Every fraction of a degree of global temperature change matters. 2 degrees is bad, but it's not nearly as bad as 4 or 7. And knowing this, knowing that we are staring down catastrophe with the tools to mitigate it, the fact that any kind of new fossil fuel extraction is on the table is beyond outrageous. It's criminal. I oppose fracking in our parks for health and safety reasons and issues of habitat fragmentation that have been mentioned today, yes. But I oppose oil and gas infrastructure in our state because I don't want to contribute to the reckless fossil fuel extraction that is jeopardizing all of our futures. Every fossil fuel infrastructure project locks us into more emissions and makes our future worse. So I want the fossil fuel industry to be a nightmare to work in. I want their PR teams to quit in despair. And that is why we fight every drilling path, every pipeline, every export terminal. That's why we hound every CEO, every politician signing off on climate collapse, and yes, every OGLMC meeting. We ran out of time for the
member of the coordinating committee for Third Act Ohio. She's a retired librarian who's doing great things to educate Ohioans and the country. Jess is working on the national level here about the dangers of fossil fuels. And Jess will speak about the responsibility of people over 60 to protect the planet and our democracy.
Thanks, Matthew. Man, that's hard to follow, but can I just say ditto, all in caps? It's the forehead might be. Yeah. So, like Kathy said, Third Act is a group of folks who are 60 and over, so I love this kind of bracketing with the sunrise folks at the beginning. Yeah, nice symmetry. We work on protecting the environment and democracy, right? All good. As older folks, we're pretty much responsible for the current condition of the planet. And yet, of course, it's future generations, our kids, nieces, nephews, grandkids, great-grandkids, who are going to be bearing the brunt of what might politely be called our failures. So I'm among these charging past the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase tipping point in global warming that will have such dire impacts for life on Earth that it's apparently impossible for those still in denial to imagine. And in Ohio, where we should be capitalizing on our state's relative livability, if not exactly safety, in these times of increasing climate chaos, we have instead a governor, a state legislature, and a commission, the OGLMC, seemingly dead set on further polluting our air, poisoning our water, and trashing our public lands and parks by giving enthusiastic and unconsidered go-aheads to virtually every fracking bid that crosses their path. But as other speakers have said, there's this dramatic disconnect here. The citizens of Ohio do not want public lands and parks opened for fracking. Citizens of Ohio want parks and public lands protected for their and future generations' enjoyment, not sold to the highest oil and gas bidder. Also has been said, this has been made abundantly clear to the commissioners. 98% of the many hundreds of public comments that have been received by the commission are against fracking on public lands. So this commission is not merely out of touch with what people of Ohio need and want. This commission is willfully subverting the wishes of the people. This commission is sacrificing our beautiful parks, clean water, and future good health so that fossil fuel billionaires and their companies can get even richer. I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't sit right. Nearly 2 months ago, Save Ohio Parks and 29 other state organizations delivered a letter to Governor DeWine demanding he call a moratorium on all new and pending nominations, bids, and leases to frack public land in Ohio. 2 months ago. Not a word back.
Declare a moratorium! Declare a
Moratorium! Declare a moratorium! Declare a moratorium!
Declare a moratorium!
Declare. Governor DeWine must find his backbone and do what's right for the people of Ohio and his 28 grandchildren. He must stand up to the billionaire-owned oil and gas companies and call a moratorium now.
Yeah!
All right, thank you so much, Jess. And I just want to say, I didn't have this in my satellites that measure emissions of carbon and methane all over the world. The Ohio shale area is a major contributor of methane emissions around the world. Like ranking, I think the Marcellus is 4th and the Utica is 28th in the world. Methane is 80 times more potent than carbon as a greenhouse gas over 20 years. And the next 20 years are the 20 years that matter in terms of reducing our emissions. And yet Ohio is just full force ahead into putting more methane into the atmosphere. It's like Meg said, it is criminal. It really is criminal, and off the backs of our public land. So much of the other areas in Ohio have been fracked. If you look at the maps of the fracking lines, there's like a big hole where Salt Fork is, because those used to be protected, and now they just want to open that up because that's what's left. And they've already gotten so much, our public lands are 3% of public lands, and they've already got the rest of it, and now they want that too. So, okay, I'm going to move on. Our last speaker is Sister Gemma Dahl, who is Director of Justice, Peace, and Care for Creation Work at the Dominican Sisters of Peace in Columbus. And she's part of the Ohio Sisters Justice Network, representing hundreds of sisters in Ohio who are committed to addressing climate change, reducing our fossil fuel use, and transitioning to renewable energy.
Thank you, and I feel like a little bit of a letdown after these wonderful speakers. Yes, I live right next to Ohio Dominican University, and I can affirm that our students also live with climate anxiety, and there is no reason that we have to put our students under extra anxiety when we have the ability to change our ways. And Governor DeWine, listen, if not to the elders and the scientists, listen to our youth. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner, and I have for decades talked about the harm that climate change is causing to our young people in the form of asthma and respiratory diseases. The heat, mold that comes from extreme rain showers and floods, the warming of the climate is causing our kids to be sick. That is just unconscionable. And our politicians can make a change. As Kathy said, I'm a part of the Ohio Sisters Justice Network, and Catholic sisters throughout this state really are committed to transform how we address our energy needs. We have to, as you said, let those fossil fuels stay in the ground. And really invest in and develop renewable energies. We have the scientific basis to do that, to be a part of the solutions. And instead, we're putting all of our taxpayer money into what we know is causing our kids to be sick, our elders to get cancer, and our whole natural beauty to be devastated. We must place our land, our water, our air into good care. And I'm coming from a faith-based perspective. And sisters around the state have put their lands into conservation easements in order to maintain and save their natural beauty.
Here, here.
We also have invested our funds into climate energy solutions, not into oil and gas extraction. So I'm sure everybody here has also done that. So I stand in solidarity with my sisters and brothers of all faiths and goodwill to call for Governor DeWine to make a change. This is Lent, so let's have a conversion of heart and turn around and do what is right. In Laudato Si, which our first speaker addressed, Pope Francis warns against the quick fix business solutions of fracking extraction. He notes that such exploitation undoes the social structures which for a long time shaped our cultural identity and our sense of meaning of life and community. There's a lot at stake here. More than just our health, our very souls are at stake. So, as Dominican sisters, our charism is to speak truth, to seek truth. And a moratorium on fracking in Ohio is especially urgent because we know the truth. That short-term thinking, corporate greed, and lust for political power is the only reasons our world is not making progress on climate change. Scientists say we have the technology right now to have carbon emissions in half by 2030, and yet we do nothing. We continue the status quo. In fact, we up the ante. That is stupid. As Dominican sisters, the gospel call of love impels us to treasure and reverence earth. Therefore, we advocate in solidarity with all people of faith and goodwill for greater care in protecting our parks, our wildlife, and investing in renewable energy solutions. Love impels us to treasure and reverence earth, and so we oppose fracking and its unnecessary water pollution, disruption of natural land.
Nations for parks and wildlife areas, 922 of those were opposed. Only one was in favor. So that's 1/10 of 1%. The public absolutely says no. It's very clear what the public, and we're the public taxpayers. We own the public land. We use the public land. This is our land. And yet we are not allowed to speak in these meetings. So if you've been to previous of these meetings, you notice a lot of people shouting out, and it's because we're not allowed to speak. And so people want to get their opinions out at some point. But we do ask during this upcoming meeting to please refrain from shouting out if you can. We have a few people that are designated to say certain things at certain times. But we've been criticized in the media for this because the media can't hear the proceedings when a lot of people are shouting. And they need to be able to bear witness. We need to be able to bear witness. We need to know what happens and what's going on in these meetings. So use your signs. There's plenty of signs here for us to let our opinions be known, and there will be media in there taking pictures.
SB 132?
Yes, let me mention that too. So there is a new bill called Senate Bill 132, sponsored by Nikki Antonio from Lakewood, and it would ban oil and gas extractions from under public lands. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to have action alerts, and a few of us will be meeting with Senator Antonio, I think in the next 10 days or so. I think April 7th is the date of that meeting, to brief her on all of the issues we've talked about today and to talk about strategy, and we will keep you posted on what happens.
And what did she cite in her?
Well, yeah, she gave opening testimony, the sponsor testimony. The first hearing of the bill was last week. That's where the sponsor testifies. She cited Jenny's research.
SOP.
Yeah.
These accidents.
She did say, and she cited Save Ohio Parks, and cited the accident that was in Guernsey County. There it is right there. That's the big plume of smoke coming out, and that's the flames coming from the explosion.
February 2nd, Grow Well Pad.
Yep, it was the Grow Well Pad, which is owned by Gulfport.
January.
And that was January 2nd. Yeah, so we're going to definitely be we're going to push hard for that bill. Okay, so Jenny, are you up for playing a little bit more until about 10 till 1?
Well, I thought we could do one a cappella song that we
Let's do it.
Okay, just need everybody to clap. Okay, here we go. These parks are your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie, fields of Barnesville, fields of Barnesville to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. Let's do it again. These parks are your parks. These parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie, from the fields of Barnesville to Preble parks are my parks. From the great Ohio River up to Lake Erie. From the fields of Barnesville to Preble County. These parks were made for you and me. Don't lose hope, we are making progress. Let's go in there.
All right, thanks to everyone for being here. That's the end of the press conference. There are restrooms in there, and you can make your way into the room and get set up. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for taking my report.
Thank you.
Well,
Are you going to just go ahead and post this at some point? I've got two reporters.
well, I saw sort of like you had a script of what was going on.
No, I didn't know. Did you like one? What's the agenda?
Yeah, I don't have it. But it sounds like you had someone lined up that had
I don't have anything. Actually, no, I do. I have two students who don't know how to edit video, so all you have to do is upload the whole thing, and they can take it out.
well, now I did have a failure with a piece of equipment. I don't know, rain history or something. So I unfortunately didn't get the last portion of the systems.
It's just pretty similar to
But I did do that. I try and do my editing in the field that saves me.
Sure.
And if I've got a program, which I have a printer at home, so I wasn't able to
Oh, okay.
but we can hand it off to your two students. I can,
Tim's right here in the stripes. This one right here. So
I can build a storyline, but I certainly look at the raw footage I shot.
you do that, and then he can do what he can do. I don't know. He's an intern. We'll see.
We can have conversation as to how we script.
We don't have to really make it we do have I'll send you the reel that we have. It's a 4-minute reel. It's just highlights of the very first one. There's no commentary. It's just people talking and switching.
I've taken a couple of trips out of this. I use it. Do that. So I use that footage. Being
Yeah. You could use that if you want. Have you met Robert Kinsess?
No. Hi, I'm Tim.
Tim Page.
Nice to meet you.
He's our illustrious intern. He's the videographer, and Robert's going to upload his video on Porchlight, which is YouTube, and his YouTube channel, and then you can just do what you can do to make it into a 4-minute.
I got a lot of good material, so yeah, I really did.
I took some too, but I don't have that big skills.
If you send them to me, I can edit them.
Where are you interning?
I'm gonna go.
With Ohio Parks.
Oh no, you can have that if you want it. Do you want it? Do you want an agenda too?
Yeah, it'll help when I'm typing things up.
Yeah, when you're typing.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'll see you in there.
Okay, thank you.
So cold. Are you going to school?
Yeah, I'm actually, so funny part, I'm actually from Michigan, but I go to school in Ohio Wesleyan. We're graduating senior.
Oh.
Yeah. And I actually have to go to class, but I just thought I would come and do the little part that I could. So yeah, I really hope for a really, really, really good meeting. And yeah, how long does this meeting typically last?
anywhere from 15 minutes to.
Actually, really? Wow.
They shoot right through. We're not allowed to comment.
And like you would be removed if you did, or like what would the repercussion be?
Well, they'll stop, they'll pause, and they can have someone because you'll see if you go in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of state troopers.
Yeah. Wow.
And in fact, at one of the meetings, they brought in, we had a meeting at the ODNR office, and the ODNR police came in, the captain, and warned us.
Wow. Wow.
Of reporting on the grow well pad that exploded in Guernsey County, just a few miles from Salt Fork State Park. January 2nd, here it is. Every report, state fire marshal's report, ODNR, EPA, we don't know what caused that fire. Well, they do know it. You from the oil and gas industry, you know what caused that fire. There was a leak in a pipe between those condensate tanks. And it ignited. Oh, well, they don't know how it ignited. Well, guess what the fire chief said? The volunteer fire chief, Warnock, he said, many, many, many things cause these explosions. It can be just nature. It can be an accident. It can be carelessness. Right. The Salt Fork State Park is going to be completely surrounded by frac well pads. No. And any one of those pads can have an explosion. Any one of those pads can have a fire, just like at the ground well pad, only much, much bigger. Because that was a production well that had been there for 12 years and there was just 6 tanks there instead of a production well being drilled that could have an explosion. It looks like Monroe County. Where's Monroe County? Yep. Monroe County explosion. They had to evacuate people for a mile. A mile. What are you going to do when there are 2,000 people in that park and there's a well pad explosion?
Right. That's right.
And you from the industry know better than anybody that this happens often.
Yep.
Not seldom.
That's right.
These are what you need to consider when you are about to give away the minerals under our lands to the oil and gas industry to have careless, and accidents happen every day and a half. An accident happens in Ohio.
Yep.
Please, our parks, our children, our grandchildren's lives are at stake here, and you're about to just say that doesn't matter. Only the extraction of oil and gas matters, so the state of Ohio can have more money to do a building, or for ODNR to have an inspector, which they don't have nearly enough.
For rich people.
I live a mile from the park. I have seen my dark night skies are white. Constant truck traffic, noise. I can't sit out on my patio. I have recordings from the new Ohio Eco Center of the fracking noise. There are 5 Encino pads lined up right along US 22, right outside the park. They are already destroying the park experience. There are fishermen, hunters, kayakers, people reporting it every day that they're hearing it. So unless you stop this spread and have a moratorium now, we will no longer have Salt Fork State Park.
Shame.
Moratorium now!
Moratorium now! Moratorium now!
We are going to start the Land Management Commission meeting.
We should be so polite.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll start today's meeting by establishing a quorum. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bueller is absent. Mr. Good? Here. Mr. Jusko?
Here.
Mr. McGregor?
Here.
Chair Wayne?
Here. We have a quorum and can proceed as a full commission. At this point, we would usually approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Statute dictates that at least 3 members constitutes a quorum for the purpose of action by the commission. Because we do not have 3 members present today who were at the December 9th meeting, it is my opinion we should wait until the next meeting to approve the minutes from the December 9th meeting, if that's okay with the commission. Does the commission have any comments, questions, or concerns with that approach? Hearing none, may I have a motion to delay approving the previous meeting's minutes?
So moved.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Good,
Here.
Commissioner Jusko,
Approved.
Commissioner McGregor,
Yes.
Chair White,
Aye. Hearing no opposition, we will delay approval of the minutes from the December 9th, 2024 meeting until the next time we meet as full commission. Now on to a couple items for housekeeping. I'd like to introduce first our new members. Anthony Jesko is an attorney from Northeast Ohio. He was appointed by the governor to one of the oil and gas industry seats on December 19th, 2024, and his term expires September 29th, 2028. Andrew Good is an attorney from Central Ohio. He was also appointed to one of the oil and gas industry seats on December 19th of last year, and his term will expire on September 29th, 2029. The statute also provides that, I did flip it right. Those two commissioners for the statute bring their oil and gas industry experience and knowledge to the commission. We look forward to working with each of them. Mr. Good and then Mr. Jesko, would like to introduce yourselves to the group.
My name is Anthony Jesko. I'm very pleased to be serving on this commission, and pleasure to meet all of you.
Thank you. Andrew Good from Columbus, Ohio. I'm also too happy to be serving, and I've listened intently to what you guys have said, and I will continue to listen to that, just so you guys are aware. Thank you.
We will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a discussion about House Bill 308 of the 135th General Assembly and its effects on the commission-approved standard lease. Commissioners, you will find the LFC bill text and analysis of House Bill 308 under tabs C and D of your binders. I want to direct your attention to the first page of the bill text and the first bullet point of the analysis. The General Assembly extended the length of the primary term used for oil and gas leases on state lands from 3 years to 5 years. The bill was signed by Governor DeWine on December 19th, 2024, and it became effective on March 20th of this year. This means that we as a commission will need to make changes to the standard lease that was approved by our commission on in April of 2023 to incorporate those changes. The standard lease is utilized by state agencies to enter into agreements with oil and gas operators after we've selected the highest and best bid for an approved nomination. You should have a copy of the proposed changes to the lease under tab E in your binders, and you can see there's one instance where we would change the primary term from 3 years to 5 years. The statute also provides that an operator who is selected as the highest and best bid by the commission can extend their lease term by an additional 3 years to provide more time for them to complete drilling wells, provided they pay the same lease bonus to the state again. As such, there is also one instance where we changed 6 years to 8 years, where the lease discusses the total lease term length. Does the commission have any questions, comments, or concerns? If you're looking at the pages, look specifically at pages 3 and 4 of the lease.
What about climate change? Are you concerned about that?
With that being said, we still need to
leases?
follow our statute and the rule for accepting a new version of a lease. So as such, with the commission's consent, we would propose posting the new version of the standard lease to the Oil and Gas Land Management Commission website for at least 21 days as required by the revised code and the administrative code. We will then come back together as a full commission and vote to adopt the changes to the standard lease at a future meeting. We would also need to vote to adopt changes to the rule language. The proposed language you can find in tab F of your binder. A quick note, if you look at the language that's proposed in tab F, there is a date proposed in red text. That's just a placeholder. We will change that date to whatever date we adopt a new version of the lease. We just wanted to give you an example of the change and what it would look like. once it's adopted. After we adopt these changes, we'll file a rule package with JCAR and the rulemaking process will begin. The rulemaking process will require public comment period, a public hearing, and the rule being heard by JCAR at one of their meetings as well. Does any member of the commission have questions?
Just one question. This change in lease date is not retroactive to the one we've approved today. Is that correct? It would be only on the future ones that get approved. The lease from 6 to 8 years right now.
That is the understanding that I have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve posting the changes to the standard lease term, as we discussed today, to the Oil and Gas Land Management Commission website for at least 21 days.
So moved.